Well, good evening, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm so excited about this episode of Behind the Smoke Screen, which has been
Yes,
long overdue.
breathing some life into this behind the smokescreen stuff. We tease this all day long.
Hmm.
We've been talking about it for a little bit, and a ton of people have reached out. I mean, we had a phone call earlier tonight with Alex Plekas. We invited him to be a part of this tonight,
Hmm.
but he wasn't interested for some reason.
No, and that conversation didn't end too well, and maybe I lost my temper, but I don't like being lied to, and I don't like bullshit, and that's what came of that conversation.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with those politicians, whether they're in the state capitol or in the MNGOP office in Edina. It's all the same. Well, there's been a little curveball. 2 hours ago, we've been teasing this to folks all day long, posting about it and talking about it, and but there's a little interruption, which is funny to me because what the party did about 2 hours ago was they got ahead of this. They didn't want it. I mean, Alex told us earlier tonight this cannot come out. He was adamant it cannot come out. And then what did they do? Oh, they put it out themselves.
Right.
So maybe we should just pull this thing up, and this would be a good jump off point here. Here is a tweet from Alex Plekish disclosing what we've been talking about. This secret that's been kept by David Hann, I would say Donna Bergstrom, certainly Bobby Benson. I have to imagine Tom Emmer is well aware of this. Walter Hudson is likely well aware of this. And so let's just kind of go through this for the folks who haven't seen it. Well, I'll just read it, I guess. In light of recent events or recent threats by an unaffiliated and rogue group. Here, let's move this out of the way. In rogue group, which of course means they can't control us, which drives them absolutely crazy, to release internal information without context and regard for the facts. I want to take a moment to proactively share these details that state central delegates have been dying to know about for like 15 months. The one matter, of course, there's really only one matter to discuss here. The one matter that has generated particular interest relates to a contract with the 1972 10 Company, LLC. There's been questions from the media and Republicans and state central delegates for 15 months to figure out who the heck are these guys. I'm kind of going off the script from what they wrote, but based on multiple endorsed checks and a recently obtained copy of the contract, the party can confirm that Michael Brodkorb executed the contract and signed the checks. While our review is ongoing, it still appears it was paid for podcast and communication strategy. That's interesting. And public relations work, interesting. Because most people, would you agree, Jake? Most people don't know who Michael Brodkorb is.
No, they don't know. He's a complete loser, my estimation. But that name is not a household name, so need to we need to introduce who this guy is and why this is actually very important.
Yeah, because it's kind of interesting. Why did they leave out some of the details about Michael Brodkorb? Why would they want to keep him a secret for so long? Well, we will tell you why they wanted to hide this from you for months and months and months. And my suspicion, well, I guess I'll let Jake talk about this little firsthand, but I'll finish this. This information is shared in the spirit of transparency and accountability. Bullshit. This information is finally coming to light because we forced you to come clean. That's why you're doing it tonight, to try to get ahead of this, what's happening right now. There is no real interest in transparency or accountability because you would have told us about this long ago. Because you had a sit down session with Alex. Why don't you tell the folks what happened?
Well, I think it's important, real quick, more because before we went live, you were showing me you've got the tweets from Michael Brodkorb, so people have to understand that the party literally was paying behind the scenes the guy that was actively campaigning for Kamala Harris, using the credentials. I'm a Republican, first-time voter for a Democrat presidential candidate. He also endorsed and basically used his social media to advocate for Tim Walz in 2022. So you're basically seeing a turncoat. I wouldn't even call him a Republican, but he used to be the deputy chair of the Republican Party.
Yeah, so we've got receipts. So here it is. We just talked about this. August 12th, 2024, Michael Brodkorb. This election is my time for choosing as a Republican, right? And he actually used to be the deputy chair of the MNGOP. second in command of the Republican state party about a decade ago.
And a
And
communications director for the Senate, and before he had an affair with the Senate Majority Leader, and then got
right.
fired for his job. That's the guy that you're talking about.
Yeah, so here's his. I proudly support Kamala Harris for president and Tim Walz for vice president. And as if that isn't bad enough, August 15th, 3 days later, I realized I've never made a donation or a financial contribution to a presidential campaign ever. So his first donation was to the Kamala Harris campaign. And in this tweet that the party put out, of course, they didn't mention how much money they paid him, but they paid him tens of thousands of dollars. This is why delegates have been saying, hey, where's this money going? So people donate to the Republican Party, thinking that's going to go towards helping Republicans get elected. Republican Party takes the money, says, hey, Michael Brodkorb, here you go. Michael Brodkorb goes, hey, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, take my money. So if you're a Republican donor, this ought to just offend you to no end. The fact that David Hand did this, and Alex Plekish, I would argue, has been hiding it for 60 plus days.
I mean, look, it even says right here, hashtag Republicans for Harris. So they're paying the Republicans for Harris guy. I think he's the most vocal guy. That's a Republican who was campaigning for Kamala Harris. And that's
Yep.
the MNGOP that was paying him. Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's why this is big news. And so I think there's two parts to the story. The first thing is this happened under David Hand, which really just means that the Tom Emmer people who are controlling David Hand were probably setting this up. Now I can't prove that, or maybe we can, but that's most likely what happened. Why would you hire Michael Brodkorb? What amazing skill does this guy have? Nothing, of course not. So they
Yeah.
hire Michael Brodkorb, the guy that's the Republicans for Harris, and I think it was over $30,000. Well, then it was found out there's this mysterious vendor registered in Wyoming called 1972-10.
Mhm.
We were privy. We look at books. We want to see transparency, and we didn't know who it was. We actually thought it was somebody else, and the party wouldn't come clean. We actually had the Star Tribune. I think it was Ryan Faircloth, the Star Tribune, reach out. Do you know who this is? And he had heard the rumors it was Brodkorb. So the party wouldn't tell. And so December, and I'm not a state central delegate, by the way, Mort, so you were there.
Yep.
But the state central delegates demanded to know who it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we go, you can go further back. I think it was like the last 3 or 4 state central convention meetings. The delegates it started by asking, who is this? What is this entity? What is our money going towards? What are the services being provided? And most importantly, who is the beneficiary of this? And David Hand wouldn't answer. He was just dodge, dip, dodge, dive. He would just obfuscate. And then it worked its way up from asking to last December. The body who controls these meetings passed a resolution compelling the chair to answer the question. Like, no choice here, chair. Answer the damn question. We've been asking for like 15 months. And of course, David Hand gets up there and hems and haws and doesn't answer the question. And then he says, look, this vendor doesn't want to be known as a Republican Party vendor. He wants nothing to do with the party. He doesn't want people to know who he is, which just, I don't know if David Hand thought that would appease us, but for people like me, it increased my curiosity level. So I went down the rabbit hole and I Googled it. I went to the Wyoming Secretary of State because this company's filed in Wyoming, where apparently it's easier to hide who the principals are. It was filed by some attorney who doesn't pick up the phone or return phone calls. I went to Google Earth. I don't know if I ever told you this, or Google Street.
Yeah.
And I typed in the address and I panned the camera to the building and it's all blurred out. Mm-hmm. And then, you can kind of walk down Google Street View and kept peeking around. It's all blurred out. So somebody has gone through great lengths. Well, not somebody. Michael Brodkorb apparently has gone through great lengths to hide this thing. So this is huge news. And it's hilarious to me. The GOP thought, oh, we'll just get ahead of this and come clean. And of course, they failed to include all these details about how this guy is actively working against the Republican Party and getting paid to do so.
Well, what's interesting is a lot came down to that December State Central meeting. And for people that don't know what State Central meetings are, or State Central delegates, it's the inner core of the Minnesota Republican Party delegation. There's about 350 of them, and they're the ones that determine who the chair is. And they were actually having chair elections in December.
Yep.
And it was an interesting dynamic. There was a team of David Hann, who's very corrupt and is obviously the guy that was behind this thing, running with Kip Christensen on a joint ticket as deputy chair with Walter Hudson, Representative Walter Hudson, who is their cheerleader and biggest advocate. By the way, we had good relationships with Walter prior to this, and the
Yep.
guy's gone off his rocker since. And I wouldn't be shocked if he knew about this stuff too. But this is the
Exactly
guy
right.
who Walter Hudson was supporting. They were
Mhm.
this corrupt. Well, so what's interesting is the right before State Central met, I want to say it was a Friday afternoon email. Michael Brodkorb, using like I think the Republicans for Kamala tagline, said, "I endorse Alex Plekish." Even Alex himself understood that that was a hit job against him to try
Yep.
to derail his campaign, because what kind of Republicans would support a dude that's endorsed by the Republicans for Kamala? So
Yep.
Brodkorb is like being used literally with his name to hurt Republicans, and those fuckers were actually paying this guy thirty
I
thousand
Yep.
dollars from Republican donations.
It's crazy. And I will say, Brodkorb didn't officially endorse Alex Plekish. He just said something like, it's great to see a fellow never Trumper running to be the
Yeah.
chair of the GOP. So we should make that clear. He didn't use the word endorse. He was just using this as a way to try to trick Trump supporters to vote against Alex so that David Hand could secure the win. No doubt in my mind, so that the paychecks could keep on coming. No doubt Walter Hudson obviously wanted David Hand to win, so the paychecks would keep on coming. It's the only thing that makes any sense, because Walter, after that convention, has just been on a rampage against Action for Liberty. So it seems very clearly just to be a personal vendetta for Walter at
Well,
this
and
point.
also probably to be in the good graces of the Emmer team. And we have to go back to Tom Emmer. His like guy in the ground is Bobby Benson. Now, this
Mm-hmm.
guy, most people don't know outside of the inner workings of the political party. He is actually a paid staffer, paid by you, the taxpayers,
Mm-hmm.
and he's also the guy who leads the chair of Congressional District 6. What a conflict of interest. Well, he's also on the Finance Control Committee of the Republican Party of Minnesota. He's most likely behind this as well, or at least privy to the knowledge. So
Yeah,
it's
there's no
Tom
way.
Emmer's people that are that I would imagine it was orchestrated from them. I mean,
Yep.
David Hand's no Jesus, and why would David Hand even want to hire Michael Brodkorb? It had to come from somebody, in my
Yep.
opinion.
I
But
I have the same analysis. This is Emmer and his little henchman Bobby Benson, who gets paid $130,000 a year forcibly by your tax dollars. So Tom Emmer steals that money from you through taxes and then funnels it over to his pal and CD6 Bobby Benson, who of course led the effort a week ago at that state central or state executive meeting to condemn Action for Liberty. Which, you go back to this tweet the party threw out, and they say that, try to avoid these people that are trying to cause division. Uh, excuse me, coming from the same people who like condemned Action for Liberty and our supporters a week ago. Like, we try to represent the grassroots movement in the state, and you're complaining about division? It's deaf ears for me. I cannot take these people seriously.
all right, I want to just address a couple comments, and then we got to get into how this information was revealed to us. I see somebody writes, Nick Duggar says the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus are also a bunch of morons who are going after AFRL. I hate those morons. I mean, this is a great point. I mean, I'm realizing more and more by the day the things they accuse us of, these other groups do. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus gave money to the Democrats. Like,
Yeah,
we are so far from the Democrat Party. It's insane. I've never voted for a Democrat. I ran my college Republicans over 20 years ago. My friend Andy Parrish, who's in the stream, who was Michelle Bachmann's uh, campaign manager and then chief of staff in Congress. Like, we were college buddies. We were on radio and wrote columns. Like,
yep,
anyone that even thinks that we are anything but like good, solid conservatives is
yeah,
nuts. But they
yeah.
accuse us of not being that. Then John Ross says, "Hey, MNGOP, explain to me who the grifters are again." It's like, we would
Exactly.
never pay someone like that. Like, that's
Right. There's
insane.
no chance. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story today. I had an activist reach out And, we're trying to staff up over at Action for Liberty. And she said, hey, I'd love to do it. And she said, I made phone calls and listed all these House Republicans that vote like giant pieces of shit. And I guess that was supposed to impress me. And I was like, I'm not interested. Like, if you're going to help these losers get elected who turn around and vote against the Never Again bill like they did 4 weeks ago tonight, why would we want you on our team? We want true believers that put liberty way above anything else.
And that's why we're in the game, right? Because of liberty.
Exactly.
Like, I don't do this for friendships, although it's good to have some friends that come out of it, people that really are principled, liberty-minded individuals. But if you're looking for a friend, get a dog. This is about politics. This is about fighting for liberty. But people have to understand that the game that we're in is to try to advance liberty. The game that the Republican establishment is in is not that. It's to have a monopoly on center-right politics. They would far rather see us be gone and to be defeated than the Democrats. They like the Democrats because, quite frankly, the Democrats are someone that they can use as boogeyman to raise more money. And they always have a need to raise money because we have to beat those Democrats next election cycle.
Yep.
But they can't have an Action for Liberty who's calling them out when they're acting like Democrats.
Yes. They use, I think this goes without saying for most people who follow us, but the two parties in the two-party system, they use that two-party system against you. You speak out against someone, you try to hold Republicans accountable, they'll say, well, then you must be a Democrat. And to a lot of people, that is a pretty offensive thing to hear. And so they use this against you all the time. If you're not with me, you're not with us, even though we're doing just as much shitty things as the Democrats are, then you must be a liberal. And it's like there's no room for anything in the middle. And the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, and the types of bootlickers like them that just go down to the Capitol every day and kiss ass and run political cover for shitty politicians. Like, it's the bootlickers like the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus that drive me crazy. They're the ones to blame. So any activists out there like them that just let the politicians off the hook, the Gun Owners Caucus they were drafting gun control legislation and amendments for the Democrats in the Senate. Like, is that really a pro-gun group helping pass gun control and making it easier for Democrats to stomach it and pass it and then be imposed upon us? There's so many of these frauds out there. And then, of course, they say we're grifters. But for folks that don't know, and most people I think do, when you are legit true blue believer in liberty and you want to get into the liberty wing of politics, that's not where the money's at. The money is on the other side of the ledger. So nobody goes into liberty. Easier. Yeah, nobody goes into liberty politics to enrich themselves. It's ridiculous.
No, and it's a struggle because just imagine finding good candidates to run for office. It's like you have to win you have to find them, then you have to win an endorsement, then you have to win a primary, and then you got to win the general election. Then once they're up at the Capitol, they'll probably spoil because the establishment has 21 ways to get these guys and to co-opt them, and it's so difficult. And that's why we love you, and that's why Action for Liberty hired you to be our president, because it's like, my God, you were the one guy that went to the Capitol and did what you said you were going to do. You didn't falter. And by the way, you raised more money than any other legislator, Senate or House, in 2021. And you were a first timer. It's like, literally, if you do the right thing, people will respond in ways. Money's not everything, but it is a sign, at least the way you raised it through the grassroots, that it says you're doing something. People are behind you.
Yes, and that's what I tried to tell Alex when I met with him in December is, look, people appreciate fighters. Go out and fight for them. Deliver for the base of the party, and they will reward you. There's a reason Trump got 1.5 million votes last November, but Scott Jensen barely cracked 1.1 million. People looked at Scott as well, he fought on COVID pretty decent. I always give him credit there, but people see Trump as this guy's actually listening to people and making promises and to some extent delivering on them. We'll see what happens in the next 3 years, but if you deliver for people, they're going to come out. And I got a couple emails today from people saying the GOP just never delivers. Right. One guy said, I'm just done voting. I'm not going to, he said, I'm not going to vote Democrat, but I am not going to vote at all, which is a shame. There's tons of these people sitting on the sidelines, and it doesn't have to be that way. But if the party's going to sit here, I talked to Alex earlier tonight, and asked him, is the Republican Party the party of liberty or is it not? Like, what is your vision? You lead the party. And he said, well, I'd like to think it's the party of liberty. And I asked, well, then why did every House Republican vote against the Never Again bill 4 weeks ago? And his response was, that's policy. I don't care about policy. The voters care about policy. That's why they vote the way they do, because they buy into a party platform and their ideas. So if the head of a party is going to say he doesn't care about the ideas that make up the party, then that's an issue.
All right. Well, I think more we should go through this timeline here, and just for people that just tuned in, the big key thing that we're exposing is that the Republican Party had a vendor, it's called 1972-10 LLC, based in Wyoming. We forced them. Now, this threat is not a true statement. That is a lie. We didn't threaten these guys.
Yeah.
We said we were going to reveal it tonight, and we
Yep.
gave them an option to come clean and do it on on this broadcast here. And they decided, well, we better get ahead of this, and they trash us doing it. But let's be honest, they wouldn't have revealed this. So let me get to this. And so, by the way, they revealed that 1972-10 is run by Michael Brodkorb, who was literally running Republicans for Kamala in Minnesota. You see him right there, proudly boasting hashtag Republicans for Harris. So the Republican Party of Minnesota last year was paying a person who was using his social media influence to promote Republicans for Harris. I wouldn't be surprised more if he actually was paid by the Harris campaign. With the way they were dishing out money to people, I wouldn't be surprised if he was on the payroll with the Harris campaign. Imagine that, getting paid by the Republican Party of Minnesota and the Harris campaign. So this is
Yeah.
how this whole thing started. And this is the timeline. You're not privy to this part, right? I had a meeting with a couple people and Alex back in January. When Alex got elected, and he wasn't our guy, that we just didn't have a guy. We knew that David Hand needed to be gone, right? And David Hand got crushed at state central meeting, and Alex was like he was the alternative with a pulse. I'll put it that way, right?
Yep.
Well, so the first thing that you did, and even me, not running the organization, but as someone that's still associated with Action for Liberty, run a podcast, a show called The Truth Hurts, we both reached out to Alex, and we were very cordial, and the relationship started pretty well. You
Yep.
know, he
Yep.
even gave tickets to you and MAGA Jesse for the inaugural ball.
Yep.
So it turns out that actually is what set off the Emmer people and pissed them off. They couldn't get over
Mhm.
the fact that he gave inauguration tickets to you guys.
Yep.
So anyhow, fast forward to the end of January, and I'm meeting with a couple people, and Alex is in this meeting, and Alex tells me during the meeting, foolishly, we even found out when we took over the party by looking at bank records that the scan checks, it showed that Michael Brodkorb signed the back of those. He was from 1972-10. I go, whoa. And he says to me, he goes, oh, I shouldn't have told you that, Jake. That's got to be off the record.
Yeah.
I
Not.
feel responsibility to get
Yeah.
information out to people, but at the same time, I didn't have a reason to be upset at Alex, because it's like he seems to be doing the right thing, wanting to work with Action for Liberty. Meanwhile, over the next couple months, he was getting shit on by the Emmer people. Now, think about this. Moore talks to Alex and says, Action for Liberty's position is you need to embrace the grassroots. And we wouldn't even expect them to disown Tom Emmer. I mean, Tom Emmer is a powerful congressman. You probably got to work with him.
Yep.
So we would be fine. You just can't ignore the grassroots, but you should work with all factions. What's the Tom Emmer position? You need to disown Action for Liberty. Like, you can't work with these people. They got to be, as Wednesday Walter says, kicked out of the Republican Party.
Yep.
So then you fast forward to last Thursday, which we caught wind of, and I think we're going to cover the 3 strikes here, because I think it's 3 strikes
Mhm.
you're out.
Yep.
There was intel that we received that the party was going to condemn publicly Action for Liberty. Do you want to cover that story?
Yeah, love to. So yeah, we caught wind of it maybe a day or two in advance, and that Bobby Benson, Tom Emmer's little henchman up in CD6, which actually isn't very far from me now. CD6 is 5.7 miles from my house, so I don't know. Maybe
You
somebody
don't
needs
have to live in the
to,
district.
exactly. Isn't that interesting? I can pretty much see it from my deck, like what's her face said, Palin. Um, so yeah, we got wind of this, and I decided if they're going to condemn me, and keep in mind, my mindset, the Republican Party has been attacking me for 7 years now. I flipped a swing district in 2020, one of two Republicans in the whole metro area, suburban area, to do so. And it's not like I ran as some milk toast Republican. I ran on end the
Nope.
income tax, constitutional carry, life at conception. That's what I ran on. So the Republicans that say, well, you can never win in a swing district if you run on these hardcore issues, bullshit. And I get in there, and I've got the most conservative voting record of anybody in the legislature. They kicked me out of caucus for doing so because I wanted to expose to people all the shenanigans and the lies that were being spewed in the Capitol. Um, and now they're going to condemn me. Like, I've been voting Republican personally. I had a great record. I'm in this legit. I care. And you're going to condemn me? So, okay, fine. You want to do it? I'm going to show up to your meeting. You got to do it to my face. I dare you. I'm going to sit there and stare at you, and you're going to have to do it to my face. And so I show up to this meeting.
So hey, let's stop right there.
Yeah.
So because that's strike two. That's I think we should talk about that. But strike one was, if we just fast forward, they actually passed it that night.
Yeah.
The condemnation, and sent it
Yeah.
out. And Alex Plekas, who says he didn't vote for it, we'll cover the phone call with him where basically I had to chew him out because he's so full of shit. But he sent out an email, distro list all Republicans, or at least all state centrals, statewide, and did press releases condemning Action for Liberty. Do we have that available? It basically,
I
if I
don't.
remember, it says a bunch of things slamming us. And this is, by the way, Bobby Benson pushing this, who's Tom Emmer's paid staffer, just so you guys understand, working out against grassroots. It says in there that Action for Liberty doxes individuals. Now, they don't offer any evidence that to be true. In fact, it's not true, which means they should be legally liable for it. And I think you guys are probably looking at those options.
Yep.
But they literally say that Action for Liberty has doxed volunteers without any proof.
Yeah, and I got calls after that language came out, people saying, well, who did you dox? And I said, good question. I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They just seem to made it up. And I had a couple people
and Alex
say,
said on the phone call today, someone on the state exec, that's what he told us.
Yeah, he just said someone on state exec. So I don't know who that is.
He doesn't even know.
Yeah. So total bullshit.
It's total bullshit.
So I want to back up because I think this is it's definitely entertaining for people. But so I walk in the meeting. Someone on the board said, yeah, it starts at 6:30. I get places early. I don't like showing up late. I showed up at 6:09, and I get a text from someone saying, hey, they made a motion to make you number one on the agenda. And I'm like, well, what the? I thought this started at 6:30. So now I'm showing up late, and as much as maybe people don't believe this, I'm a very respectable person. Like I've got manners. I don't want to walk into a meeting that started and interrupted. But I go up, I quietly walk in the room. If you haven't been in the space, it's cramped. There's only 3 seats available, and they're all at the table. So I go to the first one. Emily Novotny slaps her hand down and says, that's taken. I'm like, oh, no problem. I can stand. I can move over here. I go to the other side of her, and she slaps her hand down and says, that one's taken too. I said, okay, no problem. It looks like there's one more down there. I'm like whispering, and I can stand. I offered twice to stand. I get down to the last seat available, and it's next to Joy Orvis. And I just, I'm being quiet. They're in the middle of a freaking meeting. So I just pull the chair out. I go to sit down, and Joy Orvis, I shit you not, goes, I'm not comfortable with him sitting next to me, and throws her hands in the air. And I'm like, whoa, lady. Okay, I will pull the chair out. So I pulled the chair away from the table against the wall. I said, there, I'll sit back here. And she freaked out again and said, I'm not comfortable with you behind me either. And I said, well, I'm not behind you. I'm to the side, but I will pull my chair further to my left. And it was physically impossible for me to sit further away from this woman without kicking a hole in the wall behind me and jumping into the suite that's next door. And she freaks out, grabs her laptop and her notebooks, and goes storming by me, and I think she hit me with her knee on the way by, which is like, whatever. She's a 50-year-old woman. I don't care. But I just thought it was interesting that not only are you freaking out, you're like kicking me on your way past, and everybody saw it. Alex was 4 feet to my right. He saw it all, and everybody's eyes went wide open with, what is wrong with this woman?
By the way, I've had someone in the room vouch this story to be true, by the way. So It's not just your account that I heard. I've heard other
Yeah,
people's account of
if
this.
anybody in that room says this is not exactly what happened, they are liars.
Okay,
So,
well,
and
that's interesting you say that because somebody has a different recollection of the event. Can I
oh,
read her?
exactly. So
Can
that
I
gets
read
the
her
strike.
Facebook page? Or this is what she writes, and this is the Minnesota GOP Secretary Joy Orbis. By the way,
Yep.
I think it's important to note her full-time job was legislative assistant for ex-Senator Justin Eichhorn, who's right now in a halfway house awaiting federal prosecution for soliciting an underage minor
Yeah.
or
So she's
underage
literally been,
prostitute.
yeah. So she's literally been working with a sexual predator for what,
Real one.
months, years? I don't know how long she was as LA,
Right. Yeah.
or an
Isn't that
alleged
interesting?
sexual predator,
But
I guess.
she has time the week, and this is 2 days after her boss literally gets busted for trying to
Yeah.
solicit
Yeah.
sex from an underage prostitute.
Yep.
Well, technically a cop who was undercover,
Yeah.
and she's got time to condemn Action for Liberty. Geez, priorities are really straight up there at MNGOP. She writes, I stand 100% behind my vote to condemn the organization Action for Liberty. The purpose of the Republican Party in Minnesota is to get Republicans elected. The MNGOP is nearly all volunteer organizations with only 2 paid elected officers. Since 2016, I've been a volunteer at the MNGOP, donating my time and talents to help get Republicans elected at every level. In that time, I have seen firsthand how A4L has sowed the seeds of division and fanned the flames of discord within our organization. Many of our volunteers have felt the sting of this at caucuses, county conventions, state conventions, and our state central committee meetings. I believe because of this, they are the biggest threat to the work we do and greatly limit our capacity by distracting us from our purpose. This past week at the monthly MNGOP state exec meeting, um, Eric Mortensen walked in after the meeting had already started as if he owned the place. He proceeded to sit right next to me at the front of the table where I sit next to the chairman. While I was trying to take the minutes, I directly told him I was not comfortable with him sitting next to me. Instead of moving, he proceeded to then sit behind me in a more intimidating position. I then told him I was not okay with him sitting behind me. He still did not move, so it was at this point I stopped taking the minutes and proceeded to pick up my computer and things and moved away from him. I then asked the chairman to pause the meeting so I could get situated and proceeded taking the minutes. Still, Mortensen did not move. It wasn't until another strong woman volunteer in our organization, National Committee woman Emily Novotny Chance, called for an executive session so that Mortensen could be removed from our meeting. After the week we had at the MNGOP, I no
Uh,
longer have tolerance for weak-minded men. By the way, that's what she's referring to you, I guess, here,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I
who want
understand.
to intimidate our women, especially strong, devoted women in our organization, like Tiffany Leimeister Knott of CD7. If the male-only leadership of AFRL want to pick a fight with the strong Republican women in the MNGOP, I will expel them everywhere, and I call on all my sisters and brothers to do the same and stand firm with me and fervently defend the women in our organization that AFRL clearly only seeks to intimidate, publicly punish, and discredit the work we do. Who is with me? When did radical feminists take over the Republican Party in Minnesota? And quite frankly, when is the Republican Party using identity politics like the left? And another thing, if I can say, what about Wendy and Lisa, 2 strong women leaders
Oh,
inside the Action for Liberty community? And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I kind of feel like if we didn't have them, we would fail tremendously.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Like Lisa being on the state fair committee, she is amazing at what she does. Then she helps with the Christmas party. Like, I guess she's chair of the events committee. She's incredible. And of course, what she spewed is total bullshit. And everybody there knows it. People who are in the room have messaged me and said, yeah, we know she's a lunatic. None of that happened. And so I filed a personnel complaint with the personnel committee at the GOP like that day. And of course, they refused to do anything. In fact, the chair of the committee 2 days ago said, there's nothing I can do. What do you mean there's nothing you can do? You're just going to allow her to slander me on her official party officer page? Like, you guys are complicit at this point. So
Strike two.
absolutely ridiculous. There's strike two.
Strike two. I mean, strike one, they make up a fictitious story about us doxing and discredit our organization. Strike two, they make up and allow slanderous comments that you were intimidating women. So strike three came Wednesday night, and
Yep.
that's where Otter Tail County delegates for the second year in a row, and in many regards, you could say 3 years in a row, just
Yep.
watched duly elected delegates being disenfranchised by the powers to be. There's 37 people who became delegates at a convention that Alex told us if it wasn't for him, it would never happen. So last Saturday, hundreds of grassroots conservatives in Otter Tail County went to their convention. 37 got elected as delegates to the CD7 convention and the state convention. And we just witnessed the party last night. And they did this in secrecy, too, by the way. You wouldn't know this if it wasn't leaked to us, the actual resolution. But they will not recognize those people that put in that whole day last
Yep.
weekend to get elected, and they're instead going to just seat the same establishment delegates that were elected in 2022. It's utterly ridiculous. And when that happened, Mort and I talked and I go, well, listen, Mort, I got something to really hurt the Republican Party leadership. And this is where it goes back to. Now, remember, David Hand's the one that was paying. I mean, it could have been
Yep.
Emmer's people behind it too, right? But David Hand was the one that was paying 1972-10. But you got to remember, Alex told me this information back in January, the end of January. Okay. I'm not a state central delegate. He told I don't have a right to know that information.
Yeah.
He had, and I said to Alex, I said, and I think I said this, I think I probably called him the next day or something like that. I go, Alex, it's really bothering me that you're withholding this information from the people that have a right to know it. And I was pleading with them to release this information. And I was pleading with them multiple times. And then, quite frankly, they said they weren't going to do it
Yep.
until the next state central meeting. And I didn't get the sense that they were going to do it. So I'm like, you know what? If these guys are going to mess with us and say these lies to us about our organization, it's time that we reveal not only that David Hand, the former corrupt chair, was paying the Republicans for Kamala guy, but
Hmm.
also that Alex Plekish was not releasing that information to the people that deserve to know the answer.
Yeah. They were desperate to hide it. I mean, when we talked to Alex today, I don't think I've ever heard him as not quite emotional, but like adamant. I mean, I've never seen him animated. And he said, it cannot come out tonight. It can't do it. And the funny thing is, they seem to think, I'm just going to say they in generalities, but we'll just say, Alex in particular, but certainly the MNGOP, or at least factions of them, seem to think that we report to them when they said that we're rogue on this tweet today. Like, well, by that, clearly they mean that they can't control us.
Right.
But we're here to actually be transparent and accountable to the people that are out there, kind of the liberty lovers across the state that should know what's happening, and especially the delegates. I'm a state central delegate, and I've gone down the rabbit hole to figure this out. But David Hand, he's eyeing a run for governor. So
Not
I
anymore.
would hope not. Not anymore. You can't run for governor on the Republican ticket if you're sending Republican donations to white dudes for Harris. I don't think that's possible. So I hope to God that he just does not even try. But yeah, that's the state that we're in.
I think we have to explain then the 1,000-foot view here. Okay, so what's going on here is Alex, in my estimation, is a very weak individual, and I think he's full of shit, to be honest with you.
He's way over.
I didn't have a bad impression. Maga Jesse's been telling me for a long time. He used to call him Alex Ashrash. I had Alex on the show. I thought the guy had a compass pointing the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
He just is weak. I could kind of see he gets duped. And I still think that's somewhat true. But
Yep.
today, after our phone call, which I was biting my tongue, letting you guys chat, and then eventually I just had he literally had the audacity to,
Yeah.
so there's a couple things he said to us. I was biting my tongue on this, but he literally said lawyers advised him. He's gonna be mad that I'm telling this because he's like, this conversation's private, right?
Yeah.
He has no respect for me for what he's done. If you're gonna trash our organization, too bad, right? We're not buddies. Now
Yeah.
you can mend this relationship, and I hope you do, but you're probably gonna go crawl and cry to Tom Emmer, and we'll get into that's what the real game is here.
Yeah.
But he literally says that lawyers advised him to abstain from the vote. He didn't even vote yes or no. He abstained. Yeah. Well, I'm like, that's bullshit. What lawyer would say? I could see him say, "Don't vote yes on it."
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
Voted, but he said they told him to abstain. He had some other little lies, in there.
Yeah.
And eventually, he says he has the audacity to tell us less than a week after he sends out to all Republicans in the state that Action for Liberty is like a terrible organization and they were publicly doxing someone. He goes, guys, you are attacking me. And then I'm like, I lost it. I'm like, I
Yeah.
said, I don't remember what I said. It was
Oh,
probably would have been bleeped if it was on TV.
yeah, yeah, it would be. It would be for sure. Because yeah, that's what he said. He was expressing his frustration that we came after him on Twitter, and it's like, dude, you got to be kidding me! Like, you literally voted to condemn our organization. You're
Right.
letting Joy Orvis spew bullshit like to the world about me, and you were 4 feet away. You saw it all go down. She wasn't acting out of strength the way she claimed. She was acting out of irrational fear. It's just a dude sitting down. All I want to do is sit down. But apparently, she couldn't handle that. And I think the other thing that drives them nuts is, and I think both parties do this, they tend to, any sort of nonprofit or organization like us that maybe is, leans more left or right or more aligned with a typical party. They're so used to, like, take the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. If Alex Plekish were to call the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus and say, don't do that, Rob Dorr would go, yes, sir, whatever you say. And we don't do that. We don't report to these guys. And I think that just drives them nuts that they can't bark orders at us and expect us to take them.
Right. Well, I think it's very important before we sign off to tell people what's going on here, the big game that's played, because it is interesting that all of a sudden they're going after Action for Liberty. Like, what did we do all of a sudden? Like, we're just doing what we always do. But it comes down to actually the Tom Emmer center of influence inside of the Republican Party. I don't think it's a big shock to anyone that Tom Emmer wields a lot of power inside Republican ranks because he is the third highest
Hmm.
Republican in the US Congress. Okay, so not a big shocker there. So when
Yep.
he comes back to Minnesota, he is the guy wielding the biggest stick. The delegation, Brad Finstead, Pete Stauber, Michelle Fishbach,
Hmm.
they're all very loyal people to Tom Emmer.
Hmm.
They're his congressman. And he tries to build this empire. He literally somehow convinced the endorsed candidate in Congressional District 2 to drop out last July and
Hmm.
replace him with the guy that he had a joint fundraiser who was basically rejected by delegates, you
Yeah.
know?
Big time.
So, like, it's no doubt that Tom Emmer's playing this hand. And I don't
Yep.
even know how much Tom Emmer gets involved. It certainly is people like Bobby Benson that are very
Yeah.
actively involved. So, what's happening here is they want a monopoly on the Republican Party ranks. Okay. I got to stress this enough. They don't want to get rid of the Democrats, they want to get rid of Action for Liberty because the Democrats are fine dominating their side of the aisle. The
Yep.
Republican establishment, Tom Emmer, wants to dominate and have a monopoly on the Republican ranks. And guess what organization mobilized and activated its people to get more involved in the political system this year? That's Action for Liberty, and they know it, and they're fearful, especially in Congressional District 7, that Michelle
Yep.
Fishbach's going to have a hard time getting reelected. And here's how we know what we're saying is true. Alex Plekish, we didn't even know this happened. I think it was at the beginning last week, sent out a press release and tweeted
Hmm.
out that he is fully supporting the reelection campaign of Michelle Fishbach.
Yep.
So, in other words, no delegate for next election cycle has been selected yet, and
Yep.
their job is to endorse candidates. And Alex Plekish has decided, I'm going to basically endorse Michelle Fishbach. So, good
Yeah.
luck challenging
Yeah.
her. She's already
18 months
supported by the
before the
chair.
election.
Right.
18 months for the election and a year before an actual endorsement convention, the party comes out and does this, which is not their role. The
Well,
role
and
is
we
the
know
people
why
of
this is
CD7.
happening because Emmer's people go to him and go, "You need to get in line. You need to do these things."
Yep.
And the thing, the carrot they're dangling is money. People have
Yes.
to understand that. So
Yeah.
David Hand, corrupt David Hand, left the party with zero money and even wiped the hard drives on computers. David Hand is such a bad individual that he literally left these guys without a penny. And they've
Yep.
barely been able to operate. And there's good people working at the MNGOP right now. And I feel
Yeah.
bad about this because Alex Plekish is screwing them over by playing these stupid games with the Tom Emmer people.
Yep.
But they are dangling this carrot out there that we have money, but you got to do the right thing. And that's to go publicly against Action for Liberty. And because Otter Tail County was happening this weekend, and they are so fearful of
Hmm.
how much the grassroots has dominated that
Yeah.
process, they had to make the statement against Action for Liberty. By the way, it backfired on them,
Oh, yeah.
but they still made the statement. Well, what are we going to do, Alex? Like, not defend ourselves? Like,
Yes.
you're attacking us
Exactly.
publicly. Too bad. That's what we're gonna do. We're not a bunch of pussies like the rest of these Republican males in the state.
Yep. Yep, that is it. Well, that was fun. That was kind of therapeutic. Because this had to come to light. Like, people have been dying to know this forever. The party tried to steal the thunder, which Jake and I talked about before going live, that it's hilarious they tried to do that because great, now we just get to react and we get to fill in the gaps about who Michael Brodkorb is and how insane it is that the Republican Party was paying a white dude for Harris, who then turned around and gave money to Kamala Harris's campaign. So if that doesn't offend people, then I don't know what does, because I don't donate to the state party. The only way they get my money is when I sign up for their conventions. That's literally the only way they'll do it. So, yeah, if you're donating to the party, holy smokes, keep in mind where that money ultimately goes. It might be going to Kamala Harris 2028.
Right on.
Alrighty. Well, thanks, man. That was fun. We'll catch you later.
Yep. Take care.
All right. See you guys.